The station floated like an ember in the vast cold between galaxies, a human creation both fragile and defiant. Its walls thrummed with the faint pulse of 1,000 life support systems, its corridors illuminated by soft white light that never flickered. Beyond its hull, the void stretched forever, indifferent and ancient. Yet humanity had come here. Humanity had always come, wherever there was emptiness to challenge, wherever the impossible could be tested. The station's official designation was Observation Relay 13, but its inhabitants called it the Lantern. The name fit. It was a lonely flame in a wilderness of darkness, casting light farther than anyone thought possible. It was the frontier. No, it was past the frontier. The nearest colony world was 3 jumps away, the nearest human fleet 5. Out here, even the echo of Earth felt distant. Commander Iron Veil stood before the panoramic viewport of the command deck, her reflection faint against the stars. She had been a child when the expansion began, a time when humankind's reach had suddenly exploded, pushing past the old boundaries of the solar accord. Now, decades later, she commanded the edge post of that vast reach, where strange signals whispered through static and things older than history stirred beyond comprehension. A voice came from behind her. Long-range sensors are picking up the anomaly again, Commander. She turned. Lieutenant Olan Nerev, sharp-eyed, anxious, always too curious for his own good, stood by the console, data streaming across the holographic surface. The readings flickered and warped, as though the universe itself were reluctant to be measured. "Same coordinates?" Vale asked. "Yes, ma'am, Sector 8-1, same as before. The signal's weak, but definitely artificial." Vale's brow furrowed. "How long?" 8 minutes since detection. It faded before we could triangulate, just like last time. The commander paced slowly to the console. Her boots made a soft rhythm against the metallic floor. She leaned over the data, spikes of radiation, magnetic disturbances, a pattern of bursts spaced almost like language. It wasn't natural, that much she knew, but it wasn't human either. "Play back the last 10 seconds, she ordered. Nerev obeyed. A sound filled the command deck, a faint crackle of static, followed by rhythmic pulses, 3 long, 1 short, then silence. The sound ended, leaving a weight in the air. Vale's heart beat a little faster. "Still no idea what it means?" she asked quietly. "No, Commander. Linguistics thinks it's presentient signal mimicry. Engineering says it could be a malfunctioning probe. I think," he hesitated, "I think something out there is trying to talk to us." Vale's gaze drifted to the stars beyond the viewport. "If it is, Lieutenant, let's hope it has something kind to say." A low hum resonated through the deck, a power fluctuation. Vale frowned. The lantern's systems were old, though meticulously maintained. "Out here you didn't get replacements. You made do with what you had." She tapped her wrist console and opened a channel to engineering. "Chief Wren, report." The reply came through a haze of static. "Commander, we are seeing some magnetic flux in the outer coils. Might be tied to that signal burst. Running a full diagnostic. Do it fast. I don't want another blackout like last cycle." "Understood." The channel closed, leaving only the gentle thrum of the station's heart. Vale returned to the viewport, feeling the weight of isolation press subtly at her mind. She had been stationed on the lantern for nearly 3 years. She'd seen solar flares, micrometeoroid storms, the shimmer of distant pulsars, but nothing like this signal. It was purposeful, too deliberate to ignore. "Lieutenant," she said, "get a probe ready. We'll send it towards Sector 8-1 at first light." Nerev nodded, his expression brightening with that restless curiosity again. "Yes, ma'am." Down in the maintenance corridors, Chief Ren Jareth crouched over a flickering conduit, hands buried in a nest of cables. Sparks illuminated his weathered face, lined from years of service and too many long deployments. He muttered under his breath, half to himself, half to the machine. "You ever think, Chief," came a voice from behind him, "that the universe is trying to get rid of us?" Ren didn't look up. "If it is, it's not doing a very good job. Pass me the insulator." A slender hand extended the tool. Technician Marin Sol, barely 25, eyes full of both awe and fatigue. You don't believe in omens then? Ren grunted, reconnecting a wire. I believe in bad wiring. Omens don't fry power couplings. Marin smiled faintly. You weren't on deck when the signal came through. Didn't need to be. I could feel it. Every system on this station twitched like it got goosebumps. That's poetic for an engineer. Don't tell anyone. The conduit flared back to life, light flooding the corridor. Ren leaned back, satisfied. The hum steadied. For a moment, all was calm. Then the station shuddered. It wasn't much, just a tremor, barely enough to make the floor quiver, but both engineers froze. Ren's eyes snapped up to the ceiling. That wasn't internal. The intercom crackled. Commander Vale's voice filled the corridor, calm but tight with authority. All personnel, brace for possible impact. Unidentified object entering proximity zone. Ren was already on his feet. Come on, kid. They ran. The observation dome at the top of the lantern was the most beautiful and terrifying place on the station. A transparent sphere of alloyed glass, reinforced to withstand cosmic radiation, it offered an unobstructed view of everything outside. Stars scattered like shards of ice, the swirling dust of nebulae far away, and now something else. Vale stood at the center as the anomaly appeared. It wasn't a ship, not exactly. It looked like light-given structure, like a wound in space that refused to heal. The edges shimmered in impossible geometry, folds of color that had no name. The air in the dome seemed to vibrate with it, even through the vacuum barrier. Nerev's voice trembled slightly as he reported from the sensor console. Objects moving at sublight velocity, no propulsion signature, no energy core, but the structures changing, continuously. Vale narrowed her eyes. Is it reacting to us? Maybe the probe we launched, it's gone dark. The moment it got within 1,000 kilometers. Any weapons readings? Negative. Vale exhaled slowly. The instinct in her gut, the one honed over decades in deep space, whispered that whatever this was, it wasn't passive. Open a hailing channel, she said. Commander, do it, Lieutenant. Nerev hesitated, then complied. The dome speakers emitted a soft pulse, the same sequence as before, 3 long, 1 short. They waited. The anomaly pulsed in response. For a heartbeat, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then a voice, not human, not electronic, filled the air. It wasn't sound in the traditional sense. It was a vibration in the bones, a resonance in the mind. Words formed from sensations more than syllables. We remember the makers of light. Vale felt the words more than heard them. The air seemed to hum with them. Her throat tightened. Identify yourself, she said, voice steady despite the chill down her spine. The response came slow, deliberate. We are what was left when time forgot its beginning. You walk among our ruins. Nerev's hands flew over the console. Commander, it's emitting radiation across the entire spectrum. This isn't communication, it's data transmission. Vale's gaze stayed fixed on the anomaly. Data about what? The anomaly pulsed again. The dome's lights flickered. And then the images came, not to the screens, but directly into their minds. Vast cities suspended in the clouds of gas giants. Creatures of light weaving through the vacuum as if it were water. And then war, cataclysm, stars torn apart, civilizations burning brighter than suns before fading to embers. It lasted seconds, but felt like eternity. When the vision ended, Vale was on her knees. Nerev clutched the console for support, eyes wide, tears streaking his face. What was that? He whispered. Vale stood slowly. Her voice came out hoarse. A warning. Outside, the anomaly began to collapse inward, folding upon itself until it was a single point of white brilliance. Then it was gone, leaving only silence and a long, aching echo in the human mind. Later, in her private quarters, Vale replayed the sensor data. The computers had recorded nothing of the voice, nothing of the vision. To the machines, it had been just a burst of static, but every human aboard the lantern had felt it. Every one of them remembered the words. We remember the makers of light. Vale looked at her reflection in the viewport. For the first time in a long time, she didn't see a commander or an explorer. She saw a witness to something vast, something that had once known humanity, or something very much like it. Her console chimed, an incoming message from Central Command. The transmission took minutes to buffer, lagging across the void. When it finally appeared, the face of Admiral Roan Kett filled the display. "Commander Vale, we received your initial anomaly report. The data package you sent is incomplete. Please confirm if transmission was interrupted." Vale hesitated. "The systems recorded nothing of the encounter itself, Admiral. Nothing? No, sir, but my crew, every one of them experienced contact." The Admiral's expression hardened. "Contact with what? I don't know, but it knew us. It called us the Makers of Light." There was silence. Then Kett leaned forward slightly. "You'll hold position until further notice. Reinforcements will take weeks, maybe more. In the meantime, document everything. If this is a first contact scenario, I want it catalogued to the letter." "Yes, Admiral." The transmission ended. Vale sat in the dim light, the hum of the station filling the silence that followed. She didn't move for a long time. Somewhere out there, past the reach of human exploration, something ancient had stirred, and it remembered humanity, and it was watching. The lantern drifted in its steady orbit over the silent stretch of deep space. For 3 days after the encounter, no one slept properly. Dreams came alive with patterns of light and echoes of voices that had no language. Engineers woke in sweat, officers whispered theories, and Commander Iron Veil moved through the station with a quiet purpose, studying every flicker of energy like a priest interpreting divine signs. The stars seemed closer somehow, sharper. Every sensor reading carried a hidden rhythm, every power fluctuation a pulse. It was as if the void itself now possessed intent. Lieutenant Nerev hadn't left the observation dome in 30 hours. His face was pale, his hair a disheveled crown of sleepless obsession. He had the vision replaying in his mind's eye constantly, the impossible cities, the radiant beings, the cataclysm. He wanted to decode it. He wanted to understand. When Vale entered, he barely noticed. "Lieutenant," she said, her voice carrying the authority of command and the patience of someone who'd once been equally driven by curiosity. "You need rest." He blinked, refocusing. "Commander, the data we did record, there is something in it. It's hidden in the residual static." Vale crossed her arms. "Every analyst on this station has gone through that static. It's noise." Nerev shook his head. "No." "Listen," he tapped a control, and a low vibration filled the dome. It wasn't random, there was a structure, a rhythm, faint but distinct. Vale leaned closer to the console as Nerev spoke, words tumbling fast. "It's using quantum interference. The signal was encoded in the energy distortion, not the audio. When I inverted the harmonics, I found repeating cycles, prime number intervals." Vale frowned. "Mathematics. Exactly, a universal constant. This wasn't just a transmission, it was a key." Vale regarded him carefully. "A key to what?" Nerev looked up, eyes wide and fevered. "To where they went." Chief Ren Jareth didn't believe in ghosts, ancient gods, or cosmic poetry. He believed in circuits, conduits, and things that broke at the worst possible time. Yet even he couldn't shake the feeling that the station was no longer alone. The magnetic coils sang now soft, inaudible to most, but Ren could feel it in the tools he held, the surfaces he touched. Something resonated in the hull like a memory. And the deeper he went into the maintenance decks, the louder it grew. Marin's soul followed him reluctantly. "Chief, are we supposed to be down here?" The commander said to hold until the diagnostics complete. Ren grunted. "Diagnostics won't tell us why the walls are humming like a damned choir. Something's feeding energy through the outer layers. I want to see it." They descended into the lower hull, a place few visited unless forced to. The air was cooler here, the lights dimmer, and every sound carried an echo. Pipes ran like veins along the ceiling. Ren stopped beside a sealed panel. "There," he said, "that's where it's loudest." Marin pressed her ear to the metal. "It's vibrating." Ren pulled a plasma cutter from his belt. "Step back." The metal hissed and peeled away under the torch. Beneath it lay a dark surface, smooth, not part of the station's original design. Marin frowned. "That's not alloy plating." "No," Ren murmured, "it's not." He reached out and touched it. The hum intensified, a soft thrum that pulsed through the bones. Light rippled across the surface like liquid silver, tracing patterns that resembled constellations, and then words formed, human symbols rendered in alien geometry. We remember the makers. Ren staggered back. What in the frozen hell? Marin's eyes were wide. Chief, the ship's not, it's not just hearing them, it's changing. Before Ren could reply, Vale's voice thundered through the intercom. All decks report, we've got a spatial distortion forming portside. Ren grabbed his comm. Engineering here, we've got something under the hull reacting, possibly connected. Get it contained, Vale barked. Working on it, Commander, but I don't think it wants to be contained. The distortion appeared again, but this time closer, barely 2 kilometers from the station. Not light, not matter, but a shape forming through reality. The lantern's sensors screamed warnings across every spectrum. Vale stood at the command deck as the image stabilized into coherence. It wasn't the previous anomaly. This one was smaller, deliberate. A construct, hexagonal, semi-transparent, rotating slowly in the void. Symbols of unknown origin glowed faintly across its surface. For a moment, Vale thought it might be a probe, then it moved. Commander, Nerev said, the object's sending a transmission, same energy type as before. Route it through containment protocols, no direct links. He complied, fingers moving swiftly. The voice came again, not through speakers, but through their minds. Makers, the path opens. Vale gripped the rail. What are you? She asked aloud. The light pulsed in rhythm with her words, as if listening. We are echoes of the architects. You were born from their spark. Nerev's pulse quickened. Commander, it's referencing the vision, the beings we saw. Vale's jaw tightened. And it's implying that we are what? Descendants? The voice resonated, growing more defined. The architects seeded the void with fire. You carry their memory. You return at the end of the cycle. Then the light collapsed inward, shooting a beam toward the station. Shields flared, alarms screamed. Vale shouted, evasive thrusters, move us out of line. Too late, the beam struck. But instead of tearing through metal, it phased into the hull, right where Ren and Marin stood. Ren was thrown back against the bulkhead. Marin screamed as light flooded the corridor, engulfing the strange structure beneath the plating. Then, in an instant, it was gone. The lights flickered across the entire station. Gravity stuttered. Systems rebooted. When Vale regained control, every console flashed a single line of text. Path established. Ren woke in the med bay with half his body aching and a nurse hovering over him. Vale entered seconds later, her face a mask of calm command. What happened down there? She demanded. Ren groaned, sitting up. The hull, it spoke. Literally, the metal turned into light and hell, Commander. It felt like the station was alive. Vale's eyes hardened. Alive, not like us, more like remembering, like it had a memory that just woke up. Nerev entered then, pale and visibly trembling. Commander, we've lost external transmissions. Define lost. They're not being blocked. They're being redirected. Every outgoing signal is now routing through the main core by systems we didn't install. Ren swore, it's in the computer. Vale's hand clenched at her side. Is it hostile? I don't think so, Nerev said. But it's doing something to our navigation array. It's plotting a course. Vale stared at him. To where? The coordinates matched the signal's origin point. Sector 81, of course. The beginning, she took a slow breath. Shut down propulsion. Nerev hesitated. Commander, I said shut it down. He tapped the console, frowning. Already tried. The engines aren't responding to manual control. Then cut the power. I can't. The ship's routing around the breakers. The hum of the engines deepened as the lantern began to move smoothly, silently, under a force no human controlled. Vale looked out the viewport, watching the stars drift as the station turned its nose toward a distant, invisible destination. We are being taken, she said softly, by something that remembers us better than we remember ourselves. For hours, the station glided through space, propelled by invisible hands. The crew gathered in the mess hall, restless and fearful. The murmur of voices filled the air, 1,000 unspoken questions crackling with the same anxiety. Vale stood before them, unflinching. I won't lie to you, she said. we've lost navigational control. But the station is intact, life support is stable, and whatever is guiding us hasn't harmed anyone since the initial surge. Until that changes, we remain observers. That's our mission." Someone in the back shouted, "Observers of what? We are flying into the unknown." Vale's eyes flashed. "That's what we've always done." Silence followed, heavy but resolute. Humanity's spirit, the defiance that had driven them across stars, was not easily silenced. If something ancient wanted to summon them, they would face it as humans always had, with curiosity and courage. 2 days later, the stars ahead began to shift, fading into a soft, pale haze. Nerev leaned over the console. "Commander, we're entering a gas field, dense with ionized particles." "Sensors can't penetrate it." Vale nodded. "Visual range only." As the haze enveloped them, faint lights flickered within structures of impossible scale, towering spires of energy connected by lattices of glowing threads. They extended beyond sight, weaving a vast network that filled the void like a city built from the skeleton of the cosmos itself. Ren stared at the display. That's not natural." "No," Vale said softly, "it's a graveyard." The realization came slowly. The structures were dead. Fragments of once living architecture, their energy faint and flickering as though breathing its last. They floated among the stars like the bones of titans. Then a voice, fainter this time, almost reverent, echoed in their minds. "Here the architects fell." The images returned, worlds collapsing, radiant beings extinguished in waves of darkness. Vale gritted her teeth. "Why show us this?" "Because the cycle begins again." Nerev looked at her, his expression stricken. "Commander, it's warning us. Whatever destroyed them, it's coming back." Vale straightened, her heart cold and steady. "Then we find out what it was, and we make sure it never reaches us." In the center of the ruined network lay a sphere, massive, silent, perfect. Their course ended there. The lantern drifted close enough that the sphere's surface filled every viewport. Its material was smooth as glass, dark as night, yet it glowed faintly from within. Vale spoke softly, awed despite herself. "This is their heart." The voice came once more. "The memory of the makers resides within. Enter and remember." "Commander," Nerev whispered, "it's opening." The sphere parted like a blooming flower, revealing light within, vast, blinding, alive. And for the first time in human history, the children of Earth looked upon the true legacy of the beings who had once shaped the stars. Vale whispered, "Prepare an expedition team." Nerev turned to her, eyes wide. "You're not serious." "I am." We didn't come this far to turn away now. Outside, the light of the ancient sphere pulsed like a heartbeat. Humanity was being summoned home. The airlock opened like a wound, spilling white light into the docking corridor. Commander Iron Veil stood at the threshold, her face stark in the glow. The crew around her moved with tense precision, checking seals, calibrating suits, syncing communications. Beyond the airlock waited the sphere, ancient, beautiful, and incomprehensible. Vale's gloved hand hovered over the panel. "All systems green," Lieutenant Nerev's voice came through the comm. "Confirmed. External atmosphere reads breathable but non-organic. Pressure stable, radiation minimal. I wouldn't recommend a picnic, but it's survivable." "Good enough," Vale replied. "Team 1 with me. Team 2 remains aboard. If we lose contact for more than 30 minutes, disengage the docking locks and retreat." Chief Ren Jareth's gruff tone cut in. "Assuming the ship still listens to us." Vale gave a faint, grim smile. "Then you'd better make sure it does, Chief." The inner door sealed behind them. The outer hatch slid open. Light swallowed them. They stepped onto a surface that was neither solid nor fluid. It yielded underfoot like tempered glass, yet glowed with internal veins of silver luminescence. The landscape stretched endlessly, an undulating plane of geometric symmetry, lines curving into fractal spirals that seemed alive. Nerev's voice was hushed. "Commander, I'm reading no boundaries. The interior space is larger than the sphere's exterior could allow." Vale nodded. "Spatial distortion, a structure built by entities who didn't care about physics as we understand it." Ren muttered, "Figures, the one time I want the math to make sense." Their helmets reflected the light of the ground, halos of pale brilliance around human forms. As they advanced, shapes emerged from the haze, monolithic pillars rising from the surface, each carved with intricate sigils that pulsed faintly when approached. The air was thick with the hum of energy, a harmony just beyond hearing. Vale stopped at one of the pillars, its markings rearranged subtly in her presence, forming patterns like constellations. "It's reacting to us," she said. Nerev approached, scanners clicking softly. "Commander, these symbols, their molecular patterns, DNA but not human." Ren frowned. "Then what are they?" "Maybe precursors," Nerev said. "Templates. The architects may have designed life itself." Vale turned slowly in place, taking in the vastness around them. "You're saying we're walking inside the blueprint of creation?" He met her gaze. "Yes, Commander, and it's remembering us." The ground shifted suddenly, a ripple spreading outward like a heartbeat. The air thickened, and from the horizon something vast began to take shape. It came as light given purpose, a figure of radiant geometry, humanoid yet not, its outline bending the fabric of perception. Within its translucent form, stars flickered like trapped memories. Its voice resonated not through air, but through the atoms of their bodies. "Descendants of light, you return to the heart." Vale steadied her breath. "We come in peace," she said, absurdly aware of the smallness of her words. The being tilted its head. "Peace is the inheritance of the unbroken. You carry the fracture." Nerev stepped forward. "You said we return. Do you mean humanity? We came from you." The being's form shimmered. "You were kindled from our essence when the dark tide rose. Fragments of us scattered, seeds of continuity. We burned so you might remember." Vale's heartbeat quickened. "You mean humans were created to preserve your knowledge? You were created to survive what we could not." Ren's muttered curse barely registered. The being extended an arm of light, and the space around them filled with images, vast cities of radiance collapsing into shadow, worlds consumed by invisible forces. Then, a single arc drifting through the void, glowing with the same pale blue that pulsed in Vale's veins beneath her skin. She whispered, "An arc, that's how they sent us out." Nerev's eyes widened. "Not evolution, evacuation." The being continued. "The tide comes again, the devourer that unmade the first dawn stirs beyond your sight." Vale's jaw clenched. "Then tell us how to stop it." The being's light dimmed. "You cannot stop what is not bound by time, but you may end the cycle." The words hung in the stillness, incomprehensible and immense. "End the cycle how?" Vale asked. The being's form began to waver. "Within this heart lies the memory of the last weapon. Awaken it, and remember who you are." The light faded, leaving them in silence and the slow pulse of the sphere's veins beneath their feet. Back aboard the lantern, chaos simmered beneath the surface calm. The station still drifted within the sphere's soft radiance, its systems humming with strange energy. Crew members reported hearing whispers when near the hull, faint voices that said their names. Some claimed they saw faces in the reflections of their monitors. In the command deck, Vale listened to the recorded transmission, though recorded was the wrong word. What she heard wasn't the being's voice, but a translation her mind seemed to provide. Nerev entered quietly, carrying a tablet. "Commander, the energy readings from the sphere are stabilizing. It's not hostile, but it's doing something to us." Vale glanced up. "Define something." "Our biomonitors are showing changes, microcellular regeneration, neural resonance spikes. It's like it's rewriting us." Ren, who had been standing in the corner, crossed his arms. "So the giant ghost light's giving us an upgrade?" "Possibly," Nerev said, "or it's waking up whatever part of us came from them." Vale stood, moving toward the viewport. The sphere glowed with serene purpose, immense and beautiful. It called this place the heart. If this is where they fell, then whatever destroyed them may still be near. Ren grunted. "So what's the plan? We poke the god core and hope it doesn't explode?" Vale turned slowly. "We find the weapon it spoke of. If humanity was meant to survive the dark once, we'll do it again." They descended deeper into the sphere on the next expedition, through passageways that seemed to grow rather than exist, their walls organic yet metallic, pulsing softly like veins beneath skin. The air shimmered with bioluminescence. Occasionally, patterns would ripple across the surfaces as if reacting to their presence. At last, they reached a chamber that felt alive. It was circular, vast, the ceiling lost in mist. In the center floated a crystalline structure shaped like a blooming flower of light. It rotated slowly, each petal inscribed with glowing runes. Nerev approached reverently. "Commander, this matches the energy pattern that guided us here. This is the heart's core." Vale nodded. "Then this is what we were meant to find." Ren knelt beside a panel-like surface. "I can interface with it, if it even has an interface." Before Vale could respond, the chamber reacted. The petals of light unfurled, revealing a sphere within, a smaller one humming softly. As they watched, tendrils of light extended from it, touching their armor gently. Vale flinched as her helmet display went dark. For a moment she was blind. Then she saw. She stood on a world of silver oceans and crystalline mountains. Above her, skies rippled with auroras of living color. Towering beings moved across the landscape, graceful, luminous, familiar. One turned toward her, its eyes like galaxies. It spoke, not in words, but in understanding. "You are the echo of our will." She saw them forging stars, shaping life from energy, scattering seeds into the void. Then she saw the darkness, the tide. It was not a creature, nor an army, but entropy given hunger. It consumed everything, erasing even memory. The architects fought it with light, sacrificing themselves to slow its spread. In their final act, they bound their essence into vessels of matter, humans carrying fragments of their knowledge into the far future. "You must remember," the voice said. "Only memory resists oblivion." The vision shattered. Vale fell to her knees, gasping. Around her, Nerev and Ren were equally shaken, eyes wide with awe and terror. Ren wiped sweat from his brow. "Commander, what in the void was that?" Vale's voice trembled. "Our origin, our purpose." Nerev looked at the glowing sphere. "And that weapon, it's not something we use, it's something we are." Back on the command deck, Vale gathered the senior staff. The room was quiet, every face marked by the same haunted wonder. She spoke with calm conviction. "We now know the architects didn't die completely, they live in us. Their memories, their essence, it's all human, and the tide that destroyed them is returning." Nerev added, "The weapon isn't a machine, it's consciousness, shared, collective. The architects linked minds across light years. We've lost that ability, but maybe it's still in us somewhere." Ren frowned. "You're talking about turning people into a hive mind?" "Not a hive," Vale said. "A unity." The sphere called it the resonance. "It's the only way they could resist the tide. Alone they fell, together they endured." The room fell silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Vale said, "If humanity is their legacy, then we inherit not just their light, but their fight." Later, in her quarters, Vale watched the stars through the viewport. They seemed closer now, pulsing faintly in rhythm with her heartbeat. She remembered the being's words. "You may end the cycle." She whispered to the empty room, "Then we will." Behind her, the faint hum of the sphere merged with the thrum of the lantern's systems. The ship itself seemed alive now, aware. The lights dimmed, then pulsed once, like acknowledgement. Far away, beyond the limits of the visible universe, something stirred, a darkness older than galaxies, shifting in its long sleep. It felt the stir of light once more, and it began to wake. And aboard the lantern, humanity prepared to remember what it had once been. The hum of the ancient sphere became part of the lantern's heartbeat. It pulsed through every wall, every corridor, every breath of air that passed through its systems. Those who lived aboard could feel it now, a faint rhythm beneath their skin, aligning their pulses in ways none dared to acknowledge aloud. Commander Iron Veil stood at the command deck, her reflection caught between the stars and the sphere. 3 days had passed since the awakening of the heart. 3 days since the vision had shown them the truth, that humanity was not born, but remembered, that they carried within them the fragments of beings who once built suns, and that something was coming to erase them again. Lieutenant Nerev approached, a data pad in hand. His eyes were tired but bright, restless with discovery. "Commander, I've isolated the resonance frequency, the one the sphere's projecting." Vale turned, and it's a pattern biological and mechanical at once. It's not just emitting energy, it's synchronizing it. Our neural rhythms are adapting to it naturally. Vale frowned. You're saying it's changing us again? Nerev hesitated, not forcibly, more like reminding our bodies how to respond. Chief Ren Jareth, standing near the console, snorted. So we're all getting tuned like instruments? Wonderful. Let's hope it doesn't start playing us. Vale's gaze shifted to the viewport. If it's the key to resisting the tide, we don't have a choice. Nerev nodded slowly. Commander, the architects called it the resonance for a reason. It wasn't just communication, it was connection. Shared awareness, thought, memory, that's how they fought back. Ren muttered, and they still lost. Vale's voice was quiet, steady, maybe because they didn't have us. In the habitation ring, the crew had stopped pretending nothing was happening. Conversations turned softer, eyes lingered longer, silences stretched. They could feel each other now, small thoughts, faint impressions, emotions brushing like static. It wasn't telepathy, not exactly. It was empathy magnified into clarity. Marin Sol sat in the mess hall, staring at her hands. The veins beneath her skin shimmered faintly with silver light. Across from her, a medic named Kia watched the same phenomenon on his own arm. "Do you feel it?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "Yeah, it's like hearing a song you used to know but can't remember the words." Marin smiled faintly. "Maybe we're remembering." Around them, the others whispered, some frightened, others awed. Humanity was changing, not through technology or mutation, but memory. The architects' legacy was waking in their descendants, and the void was listening. Vale reviewed the navigation logs in her quarters. The lantern no longer obeyed manual control. Its course was plotted by forces within the sphere, guiding them somewhere deeper. The coordinates didn't match any known system. It was as if they were being drawn toward a point outside normal space. Her comm chimed. Nerev's voice came through, urgent. "Commander, you need to see this. Now." Moments later, Vale entered the command deck. The viewport was awash with shifting light, waves of energy cascading across the sphere's inner surface. Nerev gestured to the display. "It's generating a field. Something massive is forming." Ren muttered, "Please don't say another glowing god thing." Nerev ignored him. "It's not a being, it's a portal." The light coalesced at the sphere's core, forming a spinning vortex of white and blue. Space bent visibly, pulling inward. Every alarm on the deck triggered at once. Vale's voice cut through the noise. "Report. Gravitational shear increasing. Structural integrity at 93% and dropping. Stabilizers unresponsive. Whatever's pulling us, it's not natural gravity." Ren's hands flew over the manual controls. "I can't compensate. It's rewriting the laws as it pulls." The hull groaned like a living thing. Vale gripped the rail. "Brace for transition." The lantern plunged into the light. There was no sensation of movement, only a sudden stillness so deep it felt like the absence of existence itself. The stars were gone. The sphere was gone. Around them stretched a void of pale radiance, neither dark nor bright, a sea of timeless suspension. Then the sensors flickered back online. Nerev stared at the readings. "Commander, we're not in any known region. Spacetime curvature reads 0. There's no background radiation. It's like being inside the concept of nothing." Ren grumbled, "Feels like every engineer's nightmare." Vale gazed through the viewport. In the distance, shapes began to emerge, vast silhouettes drifting in the white. As they drew nearer, the outlines clarified, colossal vessels, ancient and broken, their hulls shimmering with faint runes. Nerev whispered, "Architect ships." Thousands of them, floating silently in the void between realities. Vale's voice softened. "The fleet that fell." They moved closer. One of the colossal ships loomed ahead, its hull fractured but still magnificent, covered in glowing inscriptions. The lantern's sensors translated fragments of what they could detect. Nerev read the data aloud. Designation, first flame, status, dormant, core consciousness intact. "Commander, it's alive." Vale stared at the ruin. "Then we wake it." They docked with the derelict using maglocks that hummed faintly against the alien hull. The airlock opened to reveal a vast corridor of crystal and light, preserved in impossible stillness. Dustless, ageless, waiting. Their footsteps echoed as they advanced. Symbols along the walls flickered faintly as they passed, reacting to their presence. Ren muttered, "Feels like walking through a tomb that knows we're intruding." Nerev's hand brushed the wall, "Or a memory that's recognizing us." They reached what seemed to be the core chamber, a circular hall dominated by a crystalline spire that pierced the floor and ceiling. Inside it, faint lights pulsed slowly, like the last breaths of a dying giant. Vale approached. "This must be the consciousness core." The lights responded, growing brighter. A voice, weak, fractured, ancient, filled the chamber. "Who remembers us?" Vale lifted her chin. "Humanity, we were made from you." "Humanity, the fragments endure," Nerev whispered. "Commander, it knows." The voice continued, each word trembling with age. "The tide comes again. You carry the flame. You must ignite the resonance." Vale stepped closer to the core. "How?" The lights flared, painfully bright. "Unite the echoes. You are not separate. You are one when you remember." The entire ship shuddered. The air thickened, vibrating with energy. Ren swore. "Commander, readings are spiking." Vale didn't move. "Hold position." The light enveloped them. She saw again, not as memory, but as reality. The architects, gathered in unity, their consciousness woven into one vast mind. They stood at the edge of the universe, facing the tide. It was not darkness, but erasure, devouring even the idea of being. Against it, they sang, not with sound, but with existence itself. Every thought, every emotion, every act of creation wove together into a single note that burned through nothingness. Then the vision shifted. She saw humans, countless faces, past and future, reaching across time. They were fragments of that same unity, scattered through generations. The architects had not died. They had become us. Vale gasped and fell to her knees as the vision faded. Around her, Nerev and Ren mirrored her shock. Nerev spoke first, voice trembling. "It's not just connection, it's remembrance. We have to remember together. That's what activates the resonance." Ren frowned. "How the hell do we make an entire species remember?" Vale rose slowly, her eyes filled with quiet fire. "We start with ourselves." Back on the lantern, Vale ordered all systems connected to the core's energy field. Every console, every circuit, every neural link was synchronized. The crew gathered at their stations, unease mingling with strange anticipation. Nerev spoke softly, almost reverently. "Commander, if this works, our minds could merge." Ren muttered, "Or melt." Vale looked around the deck, faces she had led through isolation and fear, faces that now glowed faintly with the light of the legacy they carried. "Whatever happens," she said, "we face it as one." She pressed her hand to the console. The signal pulsed outward. Light flooded the station. The hum became music. The vibration became thought. Vale felt herself dissolve, not die, but expand. Her consciousness brushed against Nerev, Ren's, Maerin's, then beyond them, through the entire crew, until there were no boundaries, no individual edges. There was only unity. Memories flowed like rivers, childhoods, triumphs, losses, all shared, all understood. Humanity's story, billions of lives reduced to the pure essence of experience, joined in a tapestry of light. And at the center, the voice of the architects whispered, "Now you remember." When the light faded, the crew found themselves standing in quiet awe. They were still themselves, yet more. Thoughts flowed with gentle ease. Understanding came without speech. They looked at one another and knew. Vale breathed deeply. It worked. Nerev smiled faintly, tears glimmering in his eyes. "Commander, we're connected." Ren exhaled. "Feels weirdly peaceful, like the noise in my head's gone quiet." Vale nodded. Then maybe that's how they felt before the end. Nerev's gaze drifted to the viewport. Beyond the derelict ships, a shimmer stirred at the edge of the void, subtle, dark, vast. "Commander, I think it's starting." Vale followed his gaze. The horizon of nothingness rippled, folding inward as though space itself recoiled. Something immense was moving in the whiteness, devouring the light. Ren whispered, "The tide." Vale's jaw set. "Then we meet it." The lantern's lights brightened as the resonance pulsed through its systems. For the first time in countless eons, the flame of the architects burned again. And this time, it burned in human hands. The void trembled. From the viewport of the lantern, Commander Iron Veil watched as the pale horizon buckled beneath the weight of what was coming. The nothingness twisted into form, a slow, roiling darkness spreading across the white expanse like ink in water. It devoured the wreckage of ancient ships, unmaking them without sound or explosion. One moment they existed, the next, they were gone as if they had never been. The tide, every human aboard felt it before they saw it. The resonance inside them, the shared pulse that linked their minds, shivered like a struck chord. Fear spread across the network, but not panic. They could sense each other's hearts, steady and defiant. They had seen the end once before through the architect's memories. They would not flee it now. Vale turned to her crew. "Report." Lieutenant Nerev's voice was taut but controlled. "Energy readings off the charts. The tide, not radiating in any known frequency. It's consuming them all. It's pulling energy out of the spectrum." Chief Ren Jareth's hands moved quickly across the controls. "Shields are useless against something that eats reality, Commander." "Then we find something it can't eat," Vale said. "Something it's never seen before." Nerev looked at her, understanding dawning. "The resonance," Vale nodded once. "It's what the architects used to hold it back. We've reawakened it. Now we have to amplify it." Ren frowned. "You're talking about turning the ship into a transmitter big enough to shout at the universe." "Exactly," Ren groaned. "You know, Commander, I miss the days when a bad week meant a coolant leak." They moved quickly. Every power line, every core reactor, every redundant system was rerouted toward the sphere's central conduit. The first flame, the vast derelict ship they'd found, was tethered beside them, its crystalline arteries still alive with faint glimmers of the old energy. The lantern connected to it like a spark to a dying ember. The resonance flowed between both vessels, fusing ancient and human design. Lights across the decks shifted from sterile white to a soft, pulsing silver. Crew members found themselves working without instruction, guided by intuition that felt both their own and not their own. They no longer needed to speak much. A glance, a thought, a shared purpose was enough. Vale stood at the center of the command deck, calm and unwavering. Through the resonance, she could feel her crew, their fear, their determination, their hope. There were hundreds of minds beating with a single rhythm. Humanity, unified for the first time in recorded history. Nerev's voice came softly. "The amplification array is aligned. When the tide reaches the outer boundary, we'll have one shot." Ren muttered, "Assuming it doesn't swallow us before we can light the match." Vale smiled faintly. "Then let's make it a bright one." As the darkness approached, the light around them dimmed. The void grew heavy, oppressive. Reality itself seemed to bend under the weight of the thing that was not a thing, entropy given hunger, a shadow cast by existence itself. Nerev whispered, "It's beautiful." Vale nodded slowly, the kind of beauty that only exists to end other things. Ren gripped the rail. "Commander, it's in range." Vale turned to her crew, her voice steady and clear. "We were born from light. We survived the first ending. We carry the memory of those who came before. And if this is the end again, then we'll meet it as the makers of fire do, burning." She placed her hand on the control. "Begin the resonance." The signal ignited. It started as a whisper, a vibration that filled the ship's bones and the crew's blood. Then it grew, harmonizing through every molecule of the lantern. The ancient ship beside them, the first flame, answered. Its long-dead lights flared, its runes glowing in perfect synchrony with human life. The two vessels sang across dimensions, weaving light and thought into a single, endless note. Vale felt herself dissolve again, but this time there was no fear. Her consciousness spread outward through the network, into Nerev, into Ren, into every human aboard, and then beyond the station itself, beyond the sphere, into the web of light connecting every living descendant of Earth across the stars. The resonance found them all. Millions of minds lit up like constellations across the void. Colonists on far worlds, miners beneath frozen moons, children asleep beneath alien skies, all felt it, a call older than their species, awakening something buried deep inside. And together, humanity remembered. The tide struck. Where it touched, the void screamed. Space folded inward, stars vanished, and time itself stuttered. But when it reached the lantern, it met resistance, not matter, not energy, but meaning. The resonance flared like a sun. Light poured from the ship, not as radiation, but as memory, the collective essence of humanity projected outward in impossible brilliance. Each thought, each emotion, each life became a point of illumination in the storm. The tide hesitated. It could consume matter, energy, and time, but not memory, not unity. It had devoured the architects because they fought as gods, but the humans fought as a multitude of small, fragile, unbreakable lives bound together by remembrance. Vale stood amid the storm of light, her voice resonating across every mind. It doesn't understand what we are. We're not one world or one form. We're every story ever told, every dream ever dreamed. We are memory. Nerev's voice joined hers, and memory cannot be unmade. The light intensified, folding through dimensions, turning inside out. The resonance became a wave that rippled across the fabric of the void, reaching the very edge of existence. The tide shrieked, no sound, but the feeling of an infinite scream of a universe refusing to vanish. And then it began to fracture. On the command deck, Ren stared at the monitors as readings went wild. "Commander, it's working, the entropy waves breaking apart." Vale barely heard him. She was half there, half everywhere, part of the resonance itself. Through it, she could feel the minds of billions, humans, distant, scattered, shining. She felt their love, their anger, their pain, their hope. It filled her until she could not tell where she ended and they began. Then, from within the chaos, another presence emerged. It was vast, luminous, and achingly familiar. The voice of the architects, no longer fragmented, but whole, spoke through the light. "You have done what we could not. You remembered together." Vale bowed her head, tears floating free in the weightless air. "We didn't defeat it yet." "No, but you have shown the universe that erasure cannot erase what remembers itself." The light coalesced before her, forming the faint outline of one of the radiant beings she had seen in visions. Its form was fractured, its edges frayed, but its eyes shone with quiet pride. "The resonance is not a weapon, child of Earth. It is the truth. The universe exists because it remembers itself through those who see it. As long as you remember, the tide can never truly win." Vale felt the being's presence fading. "Will you leave us again?" "No, we were never gone, you are us now." The light faded into the stars. Time returned. The void steadied, and where the tide had been, only quiet radiance remained, an ocean of starlight stretching endlessly. The first flame drifted beside them, its ancient hull gleaming with renewed vitality. The sphere's inner surface blazed with life, as though the architect's city was being reborn through memory itself. Ren exhaled shakily. "Did we do it?" Nerev smiled faintly. "For now." Vale looked through the viewport at the newly reborn expanse. The resonance still hummed softly in the background, a gentle pulse that linked every mind on the ship. But she could feel it reaching farther, spreading like ripples through reality. "The tide isn't gone," she said quietly. "It's just pushed back. Entropy never disappears, but as long as there's someone to remember, it can't win." Ren wiped his brow. "That's comforting in a terrifying sort of way." Nerev chuckled weakly. "Welcome to being human." Later in the quiet after victory, the crew gathered in the observation dome. The stars had returned, real stars now, not the pale void of the sphere. They hung outside the window, brilliant and alive. Vale spoke softly, more to herself than to the others. "The architects called us the makers of light. Maybe they were right. We carry their fire, but we make it our own." Nerev nodded. "And we remember them, that's what matters." Ren raised a mug of recycled water like a toast. To remembering, they touched their hands to the glass, feeling the faint pulse beneath, the heartbeat of a ship that had become something greater. Through the resonance, they could still sense the billions beyond, humanity's great chorus, now faintly aware of itself across the stars. The universe once again had a memory, but in the distance, beyond the reach of even the architect's sight, a faint shadow stirred, not the tide itself, but something born from its remains. It moved quietly, patient, waiting. The cycle was not yet ended. Yet this time humanity would not face it alone. For now, though the lantern drifted on, its light steady, its people awake, its purpose clear. They were the memory of creation, the echo of gods, and the first flame of what would come next. The first sunrise came to the sphere's horizon like a promise. It was not a sun born of fusion, but one of memory, a rising glow woven from the resonance itself. The great inner surface of the sphere shimmered with the return of color, painting vast continents of light across its walls. Lakes of gold reflected skies of azure fire. What had once been the architect's cradle of despair was reborn as a seed for another beginning. The lantern drifted at the center of it all, her hull still patched with scorch marks, her engines whispering with exhaustion. Yet she was alive in every sense of the word. The ship breathed. Her heartbeat echoed the rhythm of her crew, her light pulsed in sync with their pulse. Commander Iron Veil watched the new dawn from the forward observation deck. The air was still, carrying only the faint hum of the ship's core. Around her, the crew stood in silence, their faces bathed in the silver warmth. Ren broke it first, his rough voice softer than she'd ever heard. "Never thought I'd see a sunrise again." Nerev smiled faintly. "Technically, we're inside it." Veil's lips curved. "Doesn't make it any less beautiful." For a moment, none of them spoke. They simply watched as the light crept across the void, chasing away the remnants of shadow. It had been 5 standard days since the confrontation with the tide. The resonance had stabilized across the human network, reaching distant colonies and outposts. The tide of unmaking had been repelled, not destroyed, but sealed beyond the horizon of memory, where its hunger could no longer find purchase. Humanity had survived, and for the first time, it understood why. In the lower decks, life had begun to resemble something close to normal. Engineers worked on repairs with a quiet camaraderie that needed no words. Medics tended to those whose minds had been strained by the resonance surge. The mess hall had reopened, though food still tasted faintly of sterilized nutrient paste. And yet, laughter returned. Marin Sol sat at one of the tables, her tray half finished, her eyes on the viewport where light drifted like water. Across from her, Kia leaned forward. "Feels strange," he said, "like we've been gone for years and it's only been a week." She nodded. "Maybe we were out there in that void, time didn't mean the same thing." Kia grinned. "You think the commander will let us keep the ship's glow? Makes the skin look radiant." Marin chuckled. The silver shimmer that had once frightened them now seemed natural. A subtle sign of connection, a reminder. "It's not going away," she said. "It's part of us now, part of everyone." Kia raised an eyebrow. "You mean people back home are glowing too?" Marin smiled. "Maybe not yet, but they will. The resonance doesn't fade, it just spreads." On the command deck, the hum of the systems carried undertones of life. Vale stood beside Nerev, reviewing telemetry. The void beyond the sphere showed faint disturbances, eddies of light and shadow where the tide's remnants lingered. Nerev frowned. "Still readings at the perimeter. Fragments of the entropy field. It's weakening, but not gone." Vale's gaze was calm. "Entropy never truly dies, it just waits. But so do we." Ren entered from the lift, wiping grease from his hands. "Engines are running again." "Not pretty, but they'll fly." "Where?" Nerev asked. Ren shrugged. "Commander S, the one with the grand plan." Vale studied the light streaming through the viewport. "We can't stay here forever. This place, this sphere, it's not just a monument, it's a message. The architects built it to hold the heart of memory. Now it belongs to us." Nerev tilted his head. "You're thinking of turning it into a beacon." "Yes," she said, "a living one, a reminder to every world, every human, every future that we came from something greater and that we are something greater." Ren exhaled slowly. "A light that never goes out." Vale looked at him. "Exactly. They called it the New Dawn Project." Engineers and scientists across the fleet began reconfiguring the sphere's systems. Its crystalline lattice, once a weapon of resonance, was adapted into an amplifier of remembrance. The ship's core linked directly to it, channeling the collective human network into a pulse of radiant awareness that would shine across the stars. Each day, the hum of the sphere grew stronger, steadier, alive. The resonance was learning, adapting, evolving alongside humanity. And beyond the sphere, faint responses began to echo back, signals from other colonies, bursts of light from distant sectors, the voice of a civilization rediscovering itself. Vale watched the data cascade across the screens. "They're answering us." Nerev nodded, wonder softening his features. The resonance found them all. Messages began to arrive, not in text or sound, but in thought and feeling. Gratitude, awe, recognition. Humanity, scattered across hundreds of worlds, was uniting not through ships or politics, but through shared memory. Every person, every colony, every outpost was a fragment of a single song rising again. Ren grinned. "We're making the universe noisy again." Vale's laughter was quiet, genuine. "Good. It's been silent too long." That night, though night, was an idea more than a fact. Inside the glowing sphere, Vale walked alone to the central chamber of the lantern. The heart of the resonance pulsed there, a column of light swirling with faint motes that felt alive. When she placed her hand against the glass, warmth spread through her skin. A familiar presence stirred in her mind. Not speech, not words, just a memory of a voice that once said, "We were never gone, you are us now." She closed her eyes. "We're trying," she whispered. "I don't know if we'll be what you were, but we'll remember." The pulse brightened, slow and steady, like approval. Vale opened her eyes to see Nerev standing in the doorway. "You still talk to it?" "Sometimes," she said. "It feels like someone's listening." He stepped beside her. "Maybe they are, or maybe it's just us talking to ourselves, learning to believe it." Vale smiled. "Either way, it works." 3 weeks later, the lantern was ready. The sphere had stabilized into a self-sustaining system. The resonance pulsed through it in patterns like breathing. Its surface now radiated a glow visible across light years, a beacon in the emptiness of the void. Vale stood at the center of the command deck, her crew gathered around her. "This is it," she said, "the first broadcast of the new dawn." Ren leaned against a console, arms crossed. "Feels strange, using something built by gods as a glorified signal tower." "Not gods," Vale said softly, "makers." "And now we're the same." Nerev smiled. "Then let's send the first message." Vale placed her hand on the control and spoke. Her words carried through the resonance, through light, through memory. "To all who can hear, you are not alone. The fire still burns. We remember, and because we remember, we endure." The signal leapt outward, spreading across the stars, carrying with it not just sound, but emotion, the essence of human will woven through light. Every colony that received it felt warmth, recognition, belonging. It was not conquest, it was connection. And for the first time in countless millennia, the universe answered back. The glow from the sphere reached farther than anyone aboard the lantern had expected. At first, it touched the nearby derelict ships and colonies within the same sector. But as the resonance pulsed outward, human outposts light years away began to respond. Signals of recognition, faint but undeniable, appeared across every communications array. Light flared in synchronization with thought, spreading faster than any ship could travel, faster than any transmission of conventional technology. Nerev paced along the command deck, his fingers brushing over the instruments that now hummed in perfect harmony with the resonance. "Commander, it's propagating on its own. The resonance, it's self-directing now." Vale nodded, her gaze fixed on the viewport where distant stars seemed to shimmer in response to the signal. "It's alive," she said quietly, "not like a creature, but like memory given will." Ren shook his head in disbelief. "We spent all that time fighting a universe-eating shadow, and now our big win is making ourselves louder." "Not louder," Vale corrected. "Clearer, heard, remembered." The crew around them felt it too. Small tremors of recognition ran through the ship, faint, personal flashes of memory and emotion. Colonists on faraway worlds, long isolated, were recalling stories, cultures, songs, and names that had drifted into oblivion. Humanity's scattered consciousness was knitting itself together again, thread by thread, mind by mind. Beyond the sphere, the void itself seemed to respond. Faint ripples of energy, a remnant of the tide's presence, shifted in recognition, hesitating as if testing the bounds of this new force. The darkness that had once devoured stars recoiled, bending around the expanding web of light without destroying it. Ren grunted, leaning over a console. So, we didn't destroy it, but it's scared of us. Vale gave a faint smile. It doesn't need to fear us, it just needs to understand that we exist. That memory can resist. Nerev studied the data carefully. Commander, this isn't just a message. Every human it touches now is resonating with every other human. Even worlds we haven't contacted directly yet are starting to synchronize. It's exponential. Vale's eyes sparkled with determination. Then we keep it growing. The sphere isn't just a relic of the past, it's the starting point of our future. Over the next several days, the crew of the Lantern coordinated with distant colonies, teaching them to interface with the resonance network. The sphere's surface became a city of light, a hub of knowledge, memory, and guidance. Human settlements across the galaxy began glowing faintly in response, their populations unknowingly harmonizing with the collective consciousness. From the observation deck, Vale watched as signals lit up in sequence across the galaxy, stars blinking in time with human thought. "Look at them," she said softly. "Each light is a person remembering, a civilization remembering. That's how we survive." Ren groaned, rubbing his temples. "Feels like we've turned the entire galaxy into a disco. I can't tell which blinking star is a mining colony and which one is a person thinking about breakfast." Nerev chuckled. "I think it's all part of the same pattern, breakfast included." Vale smiled faintly, her gaze returning to the vast web of light spreading outward. "Every one of them carries the spark of the architects. Every one of them is proof that memory can persist even when the universe tries to erase it. And now they're all awake." The sphere's new purpose became clear. It was not a fortress. It was not a weapon. It was a heart, pumping connection across the void, nurturing life, knowledge, and consciousness wherever it could reach. The first expeditions were launched. Human crews traveled to uninhabited worlds within the resonance's reach, planting small amplification nodes, crystalline beacons designed to extend the signal further. Wherever the nodes were installed, humans began to awaken remnants of long-lost cultures, rediscovering histories, languages, and technologies that had vanished generations ago. Vale watched reports arrive from every sector. One colony had recovered records of a civilization that had abandoned faster-than-light travel centuries earlier. Another discovered a library of human thought encoded in deep memory crystals. Everywhere, the pulse of humanity's shared memory strengthened. Ren muttered under his breath, "So the universe isn't empty, it's just forgotten." "Not empty," Vale said, "full, waiting." Weeks turned to months. The Lantern became a traveling hub of connection, shepherding the resonance network outward into uncharted regions. Every world they visited carried a piece of light back into the network, and every person they touched strengthened the collective memory. Humanity's expansion was no longer driven purely by survival or conquest. It was guided by understanding, by remembrance. They mapped not just stars, but the consciousness of those who lived beneath them, weaving experience and thought into the living web of the universe. Nerev stood at the observation deck beside Vale one evening, the sphere's glow bathing them in silver and gold. "We're really doing it, aren't we? We're building something the architects could never finish." Vale nodded slowly. "They started it. We're carrying it forward. We'll always remember them, but it's ours now too." Ren's voice echoed from behind them, and when the tide comes back, Vale's expression hardened slightly, though her tone remained calm. "Then it will find a universe that remembers. And it will discover something far stronger than fear or hunger. It will discover us." A soft pulse ran through the ship as if in agreement. The sphere's resonance throbbed gently, connecting with the distant nodes, colonies, and human minds across the galaxy. For the first time, humanity felt truly vast, not scattered, not fragile, but united across space and memory. In the weeks that followed, the Lantern and the Sphere continued their work. Systems that had lain dormant for eons were awakened. Civilizations on planets long considered barren began to recover, guided by the resonance. Human colonies began to communicate not just with one another, but through the shared pulse, exchanging knowledge, history, and wisdom as naturally as thought. Vale walked the central hub of the sphere, watching data streams glow with the rhythm of life. The heart of the architects pulsed stronger than ever, not because it was being forced, but because humanity had remembered its purpose. "Commander," Nerev said quietly, "we've reached a new milestone. The resonance now extends beyond the sphere's original perimeter by more than a light year. And it's still growing." Vale's lips curved into a faint smile. "Then we've done what they could only dream of, not just surviving the end, but turning it into a beginning." Ren leaned against the railing beside her, exhausted but smiling. "Feels like we finally have the upper hand." Vale looked beyond the viewport to the faint glimmers of distant stars responding to the signal. "No, Ren. We've always had the upper hand. We just didn't know it until now." The pulse of the resonance thrummed through them all. It was a heartbeat, a song, a promise that as long as humanity remembered itself and the makers, they would endure. Not as individuals, not as nations, but as a living memory spanning the stars. And beyond the stars, the universe listened. The lantern drifted on the edge of the galaxy, the sphere pulsing behind it like a heartbeat made manifest. Each node, each colony, each awakened mind became part of the network, feeding back into the central hub. The resonance was no longer confined to the sphere. It had become a web stretching across light years, uniting humans in ways they could only begin to comprehend. Commander Iron Veil walked the observation deck, hands clasped behind her back. She watched the pulse of distant worlds, faint lights that flickered in rhythm with thought, feeling, memory. The universe had become a living map of humanity itself. Lieutenant Nerev joined her, pointing to a cluster of blinking nodes. "Look at them. Every one of those lights is a human mind awake and remembering. They don't even know they're part of it yet, but they are." Vale nodded. "And that's just the beginning. The resonance will keep growing, spreading across every human colony, every distant settlement, every ship still wandering the void. We're creating something that can't be destroyed, a legacy that can't be forgotten." Ren Jareth leaned on the railing beside them, exhausted but smiling faintly. "Feels like we've finally earned a day off, Commander, or maybe a decade." Vale chuckled. "We've earned more than a day off. We've earned purpose." Below them, in the central chamber of the sphere, the pulse of the resonance grew stronger, brighter, and more alive with each passing moment. The light twisted and turned like liquid, reflecting in the eyes of the crew, illuminating their faces with hope. Every flicker was a reminder that humanity had survived, not just by fighting, but by remembering. A soft vibration ran through the ship. Vale closed her eyes for a moment, feeling it. It was not the pulse of machinery. It was the pulse of life, of thought, of memory. She could feel the faint echoes of the architects' minds within it, not dominating, not controlling, but guiding. Their wisdom was a light flowing into the network, now strengthened by the will of their descendants. Nerev's voice broke the quiet. "Commander, reports are coming in from colonies far beyond the sphere's immediate range. They're waking, responding, coordinating. Humanity is reconnecting faster than we imagined." Vale's eyes shone. "Then the network has begun to self-propagate. It's alive, but we are its heart." Ren shook his head slowly, still grinning. "I never thought I'd see the day when the universe started lighting up like a web just because humans remembered themselves." Vale put a hand on the console, feeling the hum of the resonance through her fingertips. "We've done more than survive. We've built a foundation for the future. Every colony we reach, every mind that awakens, every story remembered strengthens humanity against the tide of entropy. We are no longer fragile. We are enduring." For the first time since leaving Earth, the crew felt complete. Not because the danger had ended entirely. The tide still existed beyond the edges of perception, but because humanity had learned something the architects had once only dreamed. Survival was not just about resisting destruction. It was about memory, connection, will. From the viewport, Vale saw a cluster of stars shimmer faintly. The light wasn't from the stars themselves, but from the humans living among them, now touching the resonance, joining the network. Each one was a spark, a note in a song older than time. She whispered softly to herself and to all humanity simultaneously, "We remember, and as long as we remember, nothing can erase us." Nerev smiled, eyes reflecting the glow. "And we'll make sure they keep remembering wherever they are." Ren leaned against the railing, shaking his head in wonder. "So what now? We sit back and watch humanity glow across the galaxy?" Vale shook her head, her gaze still on the distant lights. "We move forward. We explore. We awaken more minds, build more nodes, spread the resonance to the edges of known space. Every colony, every outpost, every wandering ship, it's all part of the same song now, and that song will keep playing." The lantern and the sphere pulsed in unison, a beacon visible across light years. The human network was alive, radiant, and growing. The tide may return one day, but it would find a universe that remembered. A universe where the children of the makers carried light, memory, and will in every heartbeat. Vale looked at her crew, each face bright with determination, hope, and quiet pride. "We've inherited their fire, and now it is ours to carry across the stars, together." A soft pulse thrummed beneath her feet, spreading outward through the ship, through the sphere, through every node humanity had ever touched. It was not just energy, it was memory, it was life, it was promise. And as the light stretched across the void, touching distant colonies and planets, reaching minds that had long forgotten themselves, the universe seemed to respond in kind. The darkness beyond the horizon recoiled, not in fear, but in acknowledgement. Humanity was awake. Humanity remembered. Humanity endured. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy itself felt alive with the song of its children. And in that light, humanity took its first step into a future they would shape, not alone, but together, as keepers of memory, as makers of fire, as the inheritors of the architect's legacy. The lantern glided forward, the sphere's pulse guiding them. Stars shimmered ahead, not as distant points of light, but as destinations awaiting their touch. Humanity would spread, not through conquest, but through remembrance. Across worlds, across generations, across the vast emptiness of space, they would carry the resonance. And one day, somewhere in the distant reaches of the galaxy, new civilizations would awaken, and they would find the light waiting, not as a weapon, not as a god, but as memory, as hope, as humanity. And the first flame of all that had been lost, and all that had yet to come, would burn brighter than ever before.